The socioeconomic discrimination that led to the conflict produced a playing field which wasn't level. In shaping the Good Friday Agreement, I and others fought for provisions that didn't apportion blame, but did require change, and required change which was on the basis of need and right. And the phrase used was objective need, and that it would be modest, incremental, and steady. In fact, what we've had in the last 14 years, the hard facts, statistical evidence supported that resources, public and private, have gone into the areas of least need, and there has been no programmes targeted at the massive inequalities within areas like North or West Belfast. 61% of all Catholic males are long-term unemployed. There's no opportunity for the young people in either community. Housing is crumbling, life is crumbling, suicide rates are shooting up. You cannot have a peace settlement without requiring changes in behaviour and practice of all those concerned. And you cannot have a peace settlement that is stable unless the most excluded are actually involved in actually making that change and getting that change. What Girdwood was to both communities was a sign of hope. To have some green space for both communities whose kids grew up in a concrete jungle, and to refurbish the housing of the Protestant communities in the surrounding area. The need in the Protestant communities isn't new houses. The need in the Protestant community in the areas that surround Girdwood is refurbishment and regeneration of people living in appalling conditions. The reality is that in housing need in North Belfast, 95% of those on the waiting list are Catholic. To actually implement the law would require actually putting about maybe 200, 300 houses that would begin to address the Catholic housing need in North Belfast. Instead, we've got the worst of all possible worlds. We've got this distorted, deformed view of community relations where you divvy up resources on 50-50. This community relations stuff of 50-50 doesn't tackle sectarianism. It feeds it and it brings the past into the future. And that is not what is either the law or practice that we fought for. I'm no romantic. I've lived here and worked here for 40 years. I've seen the worst, but I've also seen the best. And it is perfectly possible in North Belfast to have a housing strategy which tackles inequalities quietly, solidly and systematically on the basis of need.
The Alliance position says that housing must be shared. There's nobody here who will disagree with shared housing. But to force shared housing has already been proven not to work. How do they square up in this area? 90% versus 10%, and then that it has to be mixed housing.
This is the thing, the concept of shared housing is not about having 50-50. The concept of shared housing is having an area whereby people feel safe enough to live in it, and it doesn't matter if it ends up that there's 80 people from one denomination and 20 from another. We're talking about shared.
There is now a growing political consensus. That was hard won, right? Political parties here are grumbling at each other, but they're talking to each other and working with each other. That would have seemed inconceivable when I went on the Civil Rights March all those years ago. I'm not knocking any of that. 14 years isn't a long time, but this is a very small place. We can do this. And we can do it incrementally and properly. In the next 5 years, we could change the conditions in North Belfast if we wanted to.